Welcome to another session of the Syllable Method of Mind Development and Stress Control. The last time that we were here, we talked about mind faculties, specifically those of visualization and imagination, and we talked about how those mind faculties played a role in different areas like perceiving information, health, for instance, in developing intuition. And we'd like to get into a little bit more as to how can our mind faculties play a role in education. How can we develop our IQ factor or enhance our IQ factor? And more than that, how can we help our children enhance their IQ factor so that they can have the secrets of how to live a more successful, problem-free life? We know as adults we're always searching for ways to improve, to become better human beings in our local areas where we live, looking for ways to always make things a little bit better. Well, education plays a role here. How can we help our children to grow up to be successful human beings? How does mind play a role in that, and the mind faculties play a role there?
Well, Art, to begin with, the first thoughts were, for instance, once we found that the alpha brain frequency was the strongest of the three major frequencies, 5, 10, and 20, we figured that if we could get students to listen or learn their lesson at 10 cycles instead of 20, we need help. We figured that since there's more energy here, we should make stronger impressions on brain neurons and easy to recall this information strongly impressed. Now, when you impress information with less energy, weakly done, very faintly done, chances are you forget it. Now, that was our original thoughts here. So the first experiments, before we came out into the field, as you know, we came out into the field to test the system with the open public in 1966. By late 1969, we were saturating all major cities with regular scheduling of teaching our method because people wanted more. We came out of 1969, 1970 into other states, and now we are in every state, including Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and Guam, and in 72 other nations, teaching the training, the system in 17 languages now. You see how it has expanded? And the reason for it, because people want more and more, because it does work. So the first thing that we had to prove, above all, especially in the area of education, scientifically done, scientists to begin with were criticizing us that there's no way you can control brain waves. That the only time you can produce the alpha is in a state of reverie, meaning a non-thinking state, okay? A relaxed mind, non-thinking mind, like in deep meditation, passive meditation. Well, we were saying, no, you can learn to activate your mind and still function in that dimension. Well, they were not accepting it. They were calling us all kinds of names. We're crazy, we don't know what we're talking about, we're not scientists. Where do we come from? Little Laredo, and this Chicano, whatever they call us, you know, Hispanic or Mexican, whatever. Because we were born here with parents being Mexicans and so forth.
And no formal education as well.
No, and at the time there was no university in Laredo. Luckily we had high schools. So then they were saying this, no way. Until finally we had to go to a university and make arrangements with the scientists in charge of the psychophysiology labs and to do a project for us to prove that we were right. So these other scientists were calling us all kinds of names. One name, pet name that they used to mention is psychoceramic, meaning crackpots in their language, you know. They're calling us with crackpots. Well, okay. So we took it to this lab, and sure enough, this individual said, the scientists, the top scientists of this department, he said, Mr. Sylvia, you know what you're asking for? You're asking to run a project that maybe will destroy your concepts, because you could be wrong, you know. You only think you're right. But if you're so sure that you're correct, we'll run it. Because not only can we prove that you're right, but we'll back it up scientifically. But again, we can back up scientifically that you're wrong, you see. It could go either way, or you're willing to risk it. And I said, I'm so sure of these results that I'm willing to risk it. Well, okay. At the end of the project, we selected some medical students, 50 medical students, in a certain class in a school, university medical school, and then we pre-tested them with a battery of psychological and parapsychological tests to be able to put numbers on their mental faculties, find a baseline, so to speak. And then we trained them at the university, and at the end of the training, we again use the same battery of psychological and parapsychological tests, and all the numbers changed completely. It's as though we took that individual out and put him in his place. I mean, they were so amazed to see this happening. The scientists were unbelievable. And then a paper was written, scientific work was written, and it was published in a scientific journal in England, that we were correcting what we were saying. From that day on, the scientists that were criticizing us didn't criticize us anymore. They thought they were right. They lost faith, you know. So now they are not interested, or at least wanting to criticize again, because we could be right again, since they don't know what we're doing, you see. So that was the first scientific proof that we could control our brain waves. And this is what we have done with children now. And since the alpha is the strongest, and we have trained children, we have trained full schools completely. The faculty and all, the biggest that we have trained is in Pennsylvania. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the Hallahan Project, 2,000 schoolgirls. The school was closed down for a whole week. We brought in all of our top instructors into school, and we trained 2,000 schoolgirls in 1 week. And they were pre-tested and post-tested. And tremendous benefits were achieved after the post-testing. And from there on, we tested them again. Like in some other school, we tested every 6 months, and it keeps on increasing, improving. Their faculties, the grade point average keep on increasing after the training has been done. And with more practice, they're getting better and better. So actually, for children, I mean, we wish in one of these days, this system that we have will be incorporated in the educational system to train all students from kindergarten to universities, to medical universities, chiropractic universities, to all levels of engineering and so forth, so that everybody will be using or develop the use of both brain hemispheres with our system. We're willing to cooperate with these people, and we have offered it to them, and we're ready for them to take the next step. We're ready there to supply their needs and help them accomplish this.
What kind of people come in through the Seville method of mind development training for the fact of improving their IQ factor, for building on their knowledge, on their wisdom, on their education? Is there a certain type of person?
There's no clean-cut division of humanity or profession that we can say these people need it more than anybody else. Everybody needs it. Keep in mind that if we improve the functioning of the mind, we improve humankind in every area, at any age. This is the most important faculty that we have, the use of our minds in anything. Mind is a common denominator. You can apply it in everything. So some come because, you think for instance, there's a company, a factory, that employs so many students. The owner, the chairman, took the training. He thought so much about it that now in his application forms for employment, he's asking, are you a mind control graduate? And you say yes, and in what area, how many courses you've taken, and in what areas have you developed the most? They want to know. Now, if not, they say, okay, if you're not a mind control graduate, and you have these qualities that we like about you, we would like you to be one of our employees, we tell you what, you take mind control and we'll hire you. And they even pay for them. If they don't accept it, they don't employ them. I mean, this man is so convinced that all his employees should be geniuses, should be using both brain hemispheres. That's what that means. That's another term, a common lay term used for that instead of genius. They're called clairvoyants. You see, a person who uses the right brain hemisphere along with the left one is called a clairvoyant. At first, clairvoyants were thought to be people who would see things very clearly. Well, now we know there's a general perception type of thing. There's more than one sense participating at one time. Clearly feeling, clearly knowing, clearly sensing, clearly hearing, clearly everything. All combined is the function of a clairvoyant. So everybody should be clairvoyants from now on.
It seems like these are terms that in the past people have been very skeptical of. They tend to form a distance between those, for instance, like yourself, people like yourself, who use terms like psychic, which only means mind. If you look at the definition of psychic, all it means is mind, or clairvoyant. People tend to feel odd and fearful of terms like this because of a lack of understanding of what these terms actually mean and how beneficial role they could play in your lives or in everyone's lives should they know what they mean and how to utilize them.
So these terms were attributed to the occult, in the occult. But now it's scientific. When you say psyche is the mind, a psychic is a person who uses mental or psychic faculties. Mental faculties or psychic faculties. You expand, you improve the function of your mind, you improve everything. I mean, you're better because you can do so much more with your minds and so on. That's what that means.
That's why many large corporations pay for their employees to take the program. Even some unions pay for their employees to take the Silva Method program.
Notice what has happened now in the medical field. When we start lecturing in the first introductory lecture in a new city, a new nation or whatever, we tell doctors, medical doctors, especially medical doctors, you know, we like to emphasize this area for them. If at the end of this course, this training of mind control, you are not able to diagnose your patients at a distance without seeing them or talking to them and be correcting your diagnosis, we'll refund your money. Can you imagine their awareness? What has he been talking about? And they look around and there's some graduate medical doctors, see what kind of an expression they get from them. Very passive. We've trained thousands of doctors, medical doctors now, all over the world, and not a single one has asked for his money back. Now, coming to Puerto Rico, Laura, I had this experience last time I was there in Mayagüez, that's the name of the city. I can even pronounce it. Mayagüez, I think it is, Puerto Rico. A doctor by the name of Lugo. And he calls me and he says he wants to invite me to come to dinner. So after dinner, he says, you know, Mr. Silva, you know what you've done in my life. I'm a surgeon, you know. He says, yes, doctor, what do you mean? Well, at first, you know, when doing exploratory surgery, I was always hopeful that we didn't have to go twice into this individual. First to find out what's wrong, and if we're not prepared with the proper equipment, then we need to close them up and come back later on and do it all over again. That's exploratory surgery, find out what's wrong. And since we know what we're going to find, we may not be prepared for it. But since this training, I do a case reading, they call it case reading, when going to the level and analyze that patient at a distance and see what's wrong with him. Once they find out what's wrong, he's prepared for it. I haven't missed a single one to date, Mr. Silva, in exploratory surgery. I'm so convinced of this that I even use it on conventional surgery, because sometimes we find complications. And whenever I detect a complication with my mind, I'm prepared for it, and by gosh, I'm correct again. It's such a beautiful, wonderful thing. He says, now the only problem I'm creating around the hospital is that nurses are saying that Dr. Lugo is always very tired. He takes a nap before each surgery. I don't want to tell him I'll go to my lab to analyze the patient with my mind, you see. Because if I tell him this, he's going to think I'm a witch doctor. I'm going to run me out of the hospital.
You were talking about going to your level, meaning closing your eyes, slowing down brain frequencies into the 10-cycle dimension. That's why he would close his eyes and people think he's going to sleep. Now, when you're talking about perceiving information, or say making a case study, you're talking about utilizing the faculties of visualization and imagination that are developed at this dimension, and then being able to perceive this information. Through intuition, right, and then being able to find complications before they even happen. So that's kind of like being at the right place at the right time, protecting yourself against accidents, being luckier. How lucky of him, he must think, or other surgeons must think, how lucky of Dr. Lugo to be able to always know how to handle a situation or be prepared.
Right.
But these are then things, these are advantages and benefits that one gets by learning to use their mental abilities and enhancing their mental faculties. And this is something that plays a very definite and strong role as far as education is concerned. You mentioned a little bit earlier when we first started the program how information is recalled easiest when it's most strongly impressed. So the stronger one impresses information onto the mind, onto brain cells, the easier we recall this information.
Better memory.
Better memory. So in many cases, that's what bad memory is all about. People thinking I have bad memory, and so then not impressing this information onto brain cells stronger. Or
at the right level. At
the right level and more stronger so that they can recall it easier in the future. How then can you recall, or how can you impress information in a more strong way, in a stronger way, to make the recall easier in the future?
Learn to find the 10-cycle brain frequency.
And once there?
Once there, you go ahead and just hear the information, or go over it in your mind.
And would visualization, imagination play a role here?
Yes, you can play act, and any information that you need to recall associated with something that you exaggerate or something that you like, or something you don't like, whatever. Bring it together. And once you remember what you like or don't like, the rest of it is there automatically, attached to it.
So let's say you were in a situation with children who are going through school and they're wanting to learn information, whether they read something or hear something. How could you use visualization and imagination there?
Create a little story, a little imaginary fairy tale, for instance, in relation to what you're supposed to learn.
As to what you're reading or listening to?
That's correct.
So then creating a mental movie.
That's correct.
Okay, so creating a mental movie would help make stronger impressions on brain cells through the faculties of visualization and imagination.
Create a mental movie, what you're reading or what you're hearing, and then it's a lot easier to recall it. Not in so many words, but in so many images.
Why would it be easier to recall images and not so much in words?
It's always, there's more information in the imagery than there's the words. Words have no life in it. Imagery has life.
Words sound like it's more like an abstract representation of the actual image that exists. So it's easier to recall images instead of words. It's easier then to recall information when we utilize visualization and imagination and impress that onto brain cells and then recall that mental movie in the future, whether it's something you hear or whether it's something you read. So that would help any child, any student recall and develop better memory. Then how about the point as far as what we say to ourselves? People often say, I have terrible memory. How true is that? I have horrible memory. I never remember anything.
To begin with, they should not use negative terminology against themselves, you know. My memory is failing me, but it will get better. That'll be better than saying I have bad memory. Keep on saying bad memory, you're going to develop bad memory. I have very good memory, and you keep on repeating it, you're going to develop a good memory.
That sounds like a form of programming the brain.
That's right. You need to mental house clean, get rid of all negative terminology. Sometimes you say, well, I'm so happy I could die. You don't really want to die. I mean, am I going to tickle you? You're going to be tickled to death? You don't want that to happen. This is negative terminology. We don't want to use negative terminology at all, especially in front of children or with children.
So we should help our children to think positively?
Always, always, always.
Help them to think, I can remember instead of I can't?
That's right.
I have good memory instead of bad memory?
Keep in mind that a person with a negative mental attitude is the one who always creates problems. It's people who maintain a positive mental attitude that always solves problems.
And that is a lesson that every child should learn and grow up with. Because then they learn thinking, I am confident, I am a genius, I am capable, I am strong.
I can do anything anybody else can do.
I can learn, I can ask questions and be successful, I can solve problems. There's always a solution. And all these positive thoughts are a great advantage compared to a child who grows up thinking, I can't, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I'm not intelligent, I never remember anything, I always make bad grades, I'm too ugly or whatever. The differences are dramatic as far as their end result, as far as their productivity, their ability to solve problems and face the world eye to eye and solve these problems in that way.
That's correct.
So then in education and self and personal development, we should start with our children at a very young age, preferably when they can understand, and definitely between the ages of 7 and 14.
That's right. If you do it before ages 7 and 14, they'll be practicing to know what to do when they become of age.
Kind of like a disciplining themselves.
That's right.
And this is something they'll always have for the rest of their lives.
Now, once you do it between 7 and 14, you don't need to do it anymore from their own. Once they're 14 years of age, they're geniuses, they're clairvoyants, using both brain hemispheres, and that's it.
Define a genius.
A genius is a person who uses his mind in a very extraordinary manner. A genius is a person who has tremendously developed his faculty of visualization and imagination. Period.
It sounds like every child is a genius because children are always using visualization, imagination. They have imaginary playmates, they make up stories, they have a wonderful imagination. And in that aspect, they're using genius qualities in.
We need to encourage them to continue it and to be able to be more serious about it. Use it in business, use it in school, in other areas. Instead
of saying, don't do that, say, oh, wonderful, how wonderful, what else can you imagine? Or encourage that kind of aspect.
You have to describe to you what they are imagining, especially to describe them to you, whatever that is, in full detail and color. Color, color, color. It's always important.
And as far as science and scientific backup, there's plenty of scientific research that has backed up all that you've done.
We have high school, several high schools have a paper written on 3 high school projects. And it's tremendously improvement noticed in the before and after. And we have done it in so many schools now. We have done it in dozens of schools at all levels, from kindergarten to university level. Now there are some universities now that are issuing credits towards a degree when they take our training.
In what areas can the mind faculties play a role? We've talked in past programs as far as health is concerned, education. We've talked a little about intuition. Perhaps we could talk more about intuition. I'm sure we will in other programs. What are some of the other areas or other benefits that we can get by utilizing our mind faculties?
One of the most important, I think, Laura, and it's a very serious area because people are so biased in so many ways because of wrong previous programming in their lives and their ancestry and so on, is in religion. See, religion is for the mind, not for the body. And we're experts in the mind, in the functioning of the mind. So this is the ideal thing, to be able to know how to seek help from higher levels of intelligence. People call it God. Well, we really don't know what we're talking about when we say God. We know what we mean. Is there an entity that looks over every one of us, every second of the day? Almost 5 billion of us on this planet. What about other planets? Maybe in the same solar system, or maybe in other solar systems, or maybe in some other part of our galaxy, or another galaxy which there are billions of them. How can then one single entity take care of all of this? It could be a system, hierarchy of intelligences in other dimensions, governed by the supreme intelligence, and all the whole system is called God. So we seek God at any level of intelligence that we can get help to solve our problems. But we need to do it subjectively because God is invisible.
Many times people seem to want to communicate, let's say, or do their praying to God from a physical dimension. Is that wrong then? Like saying, oh, please, God, help me with this. We have problems there. Is that the appropriate way?
There's a special way of doing it, like finding the right formula, the correct formula, and learn to use the correct formula correctly. There is a way for everything. Everything is scientific. Everything is figured mathematically in this universe. There's no mistaken about creation. I mean, to the smallest detail, mathematically arranged or created. So we need to know exactly in what position, at what dimension of mind, and how to ask higher intelligences in the subjective spiritual dimension, the Word of God, the dimension where God exists, to help us whenever we have a problem that we're not able to solve ourselves. And only then do we bother these gods. Because actually, we think that we have been created at this plane of existence to take care of creation at our level. We're supposed to convert this planet into a paradise. We were sent to work. We were not sent to enjoy ourselves. We did not choose to come. We were sent. Well, you don't remember having been asked, do you want to go to planet Earth? You know, all of a sudden you're here. So whoever did it can sure do it, has the power to do so. So you're here now, you want to know, what am I here for? And you better get to know what you're here for and be on the job to be able to do the right thing that's expected of you. But what happens when God, let's say God, that's the intelligent dimension or hierarchy of intelligences, has assigned us to be on this planet to convert the planet into a paradise? Now, as soon as we get here, we're supposed to take care of creation at our level, at our plane of existence. This God, or hierarchy of intelligence, takes care of the rest of the universe. See? There's billions of galaxies, billions of solar systems, and so on. But here we're responsible for this small grain of sand, let's say. But as soon as we get here, instead of us doing the work, we'll get in trouble. God, please help my mother. God, please help my business. God, please. We put God to work all over the place. We were created to do the work ourselves. God, don't bother. I'll do it myself, so I'm here. I'll take care of this business. I'll take care of that problem over there. That's what we're here for.
And that's where, if we learned how to use our full potential and learn to use our human faculties, we would be able to get this information to solve our problems. So we're talking about, in the Silva method, learning techniques and tools to help develop our mental faculties, our mind faculties, and be able to utilize them in many areas of life.
In health,
education,
in business, in religion, family relations, personal problems, I mean, everywhere. Mind is a common denominator.
So we're talking about a balance there, perhaps, finding a balance in what is, many times we hear the term of spirit, mind, and body. We're talking about a balance in body as far as health is concerned. We're talking a balance as far as in spirit and in mind. And we have a balance between the three.
But see, mind is spirit
Mind
itself.
and spirit. That's what I was saying. That's a misconception of when people say, find the balance of spirit, mind, and body. Because we're talking about actually two things meaning the same thing, the mind and the spirit being the same thing.
Because it's invisible, intangible.
But when we do have that balance, and we have achieved that balance by being able to be productive and successful in mind as well as body, they both help one another, don't they?
That's correct.
And then success follows.
You need to have proper balance in both dimensions to be able to function correctly on this plane of existence.
And so then that's what you would call success. How would you define success?
Success means being in harmony, in attunement, in phase with everything, moving in the right step, in the right direction with everything that's evolving. Because if not, we'd be causing friction if we get out of step or move in the opposite direction. So this is the same as having harmony. Is like saying love. Love is the same thing. Love is everything moving in the proper direction at the proper time and not causing problems on the way. So that would be success when you're in good thought, in good placement, when you're in a good agreement with everything around you and everybody with you. Now that's success. If you create problems, create enemies, you're not successful. You're supposed to create friends. And to create friends, you must help them in many times to solve their own problems. And when you are capable, as a clairvoyant, to help other people, you gain by helping others gain. Not that you're going to gain at somebody else's losses. And that's what harmony means. That's what success means. Do not create problems. Don't hurt anybody. Do not cause suffering. Alleviate suffering. Correct all problems.
And serving humanity in that way.
That's it.
It's almost like we're humans first. And in being humans first, our first duty is to serve humanity in solving problems and doing our part in that aspect of our lives.
Now later we're going to cover, Laura, the difference between people who are out there to create problems and people who are out there to solve problems.
It seems that also we've talked about quite a bit the subtle method of mind development and stress control being involved, as you mentioned, and we've discussed in past programs, in business, in health, intuition. But we haven't talked quite a bit on religion, and we haven't gone into the business aspect of it. We haven't gone into, let's say, personal relationships, family relationships. We live in such a stressed world that there's many problems that exist in our situation as far as religion is concerned. We tend to fall away from our religion instead of getting closer. There's areas in business, and business are failing. We live in an area personally here, locally, that's very deprived and it's hurting. And many of the same exist throughout the world. So we will be able to talk more about the subtle method in areas of business, personal lives, and family lives, and religion. So join us again in our next session, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you.